The dust hadn't settled on Main Street when Cole Harmon rode in hard, his horse breathing like a broke bellows, mud caked up to the stirrups. He didn't slow down at the edge of town. He didn't tip his hat to the men on the porch of Dunmore's general store. He rode straight to the rail in front of the bathhouse, dropped down from the saddle, and tied off his horse with one hand while he dug coins out. There was a woman standing in the doorway of the bathhouse, holding a broom like she'd forgotten what it was for. Cole didn't look at her directly. He set 3 coins on the window ledge beside the door. More than the posted price, and said one word: bath. He walked past her and inside. The woman, whose name was Nora Calloway, stood in the doorway for another half-second, looking at the coins. Then she looked at the man's back, disappearing into the dim hallway. Then she looked at the coins again. She picked them up, tucked them into her apron pocket, and went back to sweeping. The town of Gravel Bend, Texas sat at the base of a long flat ridge that the old-timers called the Spine because it cut the land in two and nothing. The ridge was the reason for the town. Travelers coming off the trail needed water, rest, and a place to leave money before they climbed it again. The town had built itself around that need the way a barnacle builds around a rock, slow and stubborn and not particularly pretty. Nora had run the bathhouse for 3 years. Before that, she had been a cook at the lumber camp outside of Fort Merritt, and before that, she had been a rancher's wife in New Mexico, and before. She had been wrong about most of it. But the bathhouse paid steady, and steady was the thing she had learned to want above all others. She was 34 years old and had the hands to prove it. She did not know Cole Harmon's name yet. She would not know it until the following morning, when Deputy Lou Crane came by before sunrise with a wanted notice and a look on his face like. The wanted notice had a sketch on it. The sketch looked enough like the man from yesterday that Nora's stomach went tight. Cole Harmon, the notice said, wanted in 2 counties for suspicion of robbing the Mineral Ridge Bank. Reward offered. Approach with caution. Nora read it twice. Lou Crane watched her read it. She handed the notice back without saying anything. Lou Crane said, "He come through here?" Nora said, "Lot of men come through here." Lou said, "Nora." Nora said, "I run a bathhouse." Lou, "I don't run a registry." Lou took the notice back, folded it once, and tucked it inside his vest. He stood there another moment. The way a man does when he wants to say something else but hasn't figured out how to say it without it costing him. Nora went back inside and stood in the hallway for a long minute, listening to the morning sounds of Gravel Bend coming through the walls, the creak, the distant bark of the blacksmith's dog, the slow drip of the water pipe in the back room. The thing was, the man had already been gone when she woke up that morning. She'd found the back room clean and the towel folded on the bench, which almost nobody did, and on top of the towel was a small copper button that hadn't been there before, the kind that came off a good coat, the kind that meant something. She'd put the button in her apron pocket without thinking about it. Now she took it out and looked at it in the light from the front window. It was a small, plain thing, a circle with an eagle pressed into the face of it. The wings spread flat and simple, not fancy, just clear. She didn't know why she kept looking at it. She put it back in her pocket and got on with the morning. The first customer came in at 7:30, the second at 8. The third was a cattle drover named Pete, who used 3 times the allotted water and smelled like he needed 4 times. By midday, she had seen 9 customers, boiled 2 pots of water, patched the leak in the copper tub with a piece of solder she'd been saving. She had also thought about Cole Harmon 7 times, which she noted with the same flat annoyance she applied to most things she didn't understand. The man had paid more than the price. He had cleaned up after himself. He had left a button that looked like it mattered to him. None of those things were crimes. But the notice was real, and Lou Crane's face had been real, and the fact that he'd ridden in hard and alone and looked like a man running. Gravel Bend was a small place. Small places had long memories. Nora had come here to be left alone in peace. She had not come here to get tangled in someone else's trouble. She told herself this while she swept the front steps at 3 in the afternoon. She told herself this while she cooked a pot of beans for supper. She told herself this While she lay in the dark that night, listening to the wind coming off the spine, and somewhere, much farther off, the faint. The way a man moves when he doesn't have a direction yet but can't afford to stand still. She pressed the copper button between her fingers until sleep came. It took a while. In the morning, she found boot prints in the soft dirt behind the bathhouse, close to the water trough, like someone had watered their horse. She looked at the prints for a long time. She did not tell Lou Crane about them. She didn't know why. That was the part that kept her standing there in the early light. Hands in her apron pockets, boot prints at her feet, the whole quiet town. She didn't know why, and not knowing why was the thing that sat the heaviest. She went inside. She boiled the water. She opened the door for the morning. 3 days passed and Cole Harmon did not come back. Lou Crane came by twice, casual, the way a man acts casual when he is not being casual at all. He asked about business. He asked about the Ridge Road. He mentioned, almost as a side note both times, that there had been no further word on the Harmon situation, which was either good news or the kind. Nora gave him coffee and short answers, and sent him on his way. On the 4th morning, a woman came in that Nora had not seen before. She was maybe 40, with a straight back and tired eyes, and a dress that had been good once and was being made to last longer than it wanted to. She asked the price of a bath. Nora told her. The woman opened her coin purse and counted out what she had, and what she had was not enough. She was 11 cents short. She counted it again, like the numbers might change. They didn't. Nora looked at the coins in the woman's palm. She thought about the extra coins Cole Harmon had left on the ledge 3 days ago. She thought about the button in her pocket. She said, "That's enough." The woman looked up. Nora said, "Go on back." The woman opened her mouth to say something, then closed it. She nodded once, the way people nod when they are trying to hold themselves together, and she went down the hall. Nora stood at the front window and looked out at Main Street. Somewhere out past the spine, Cole Harmon was either hiding or running or already caught. She had no way of knowing which. She had 11 cents less in her apron pocket. The wind was picking up from the west, carrying the dry smell of the ridge and the far-off dust of something moving. She stood there until she couldn't see it anymore. Then she went back to work. The night that changed everything came in sideways. The way trouble usually does in flat country, not from the direction you're watching. Nora was closing up the back room when she heard the side door open. Not a knock, not a call, just the door, easing in quiet, the way a man opens a door when he doesn't want to be heard opening it. She straightened up slow. She picked up the iron poker she kept beside the water barrel. Not because she was afraid, but because she was practical, and practical was the thing. She walked to the hallway and stopped. Cole Harmon was standing in the dim light at the end of it, hat in his hand, one shoulder lower than the other, which was either an old habit. His face was the same as she remembered, except 3 days harder and maybe 1 degree less certain. He looked at the poker in her hand. He said, "I'm not here for trouble." She said, "Then why'd you come in the side door?" He said, "Because I saw Lou Crane's horse out front." Lou's horse was not out front. Nora knew that. She'd looked when she locked up, but she also understood what he meant. He meant that he was watching. He meant that he was careful. He meant that he was not walking in blind, which told her something about the kind of man he was, even if she didn't know yet whether that was a good. She lowered the poker, not all the way, just enough, she said. "Lou's been gone 2 hours. Cole said, I know." A long pause sat in the hall between them, full of the things neither one had said yet. Then Nora stepped back into the room and left the doorway open. After a moment, he followed. She set the poker against the wall. She didn't offer him a seat because there was only one chair and she was using it. He leaned against the wall instead, hat still in his hands, working the brim with his fingers the way a man does when he's got too much in his head. She said, "The notice says Mineral Ridge Bank," he said. "I know what the notice says," she said. "Did you do it?" He looked at her, not like he was deciding whether to tell the truth, but like he was deciding whether the truth was something she could do anything. He said, "It's not a simple answer." she said. "I didn't ask for simple. I asked for true." Another pause. The wind hit the side of the building, and the lamp on the shelf swayed once and went still. He said, "There were 4 of us. I was there. I didn't take anything, and I didn't fire anything, but I was there, and a man died, and being there when a man dies is the kind of thing that doesn't." Nora sat with that for a moment. She knew about that particular kind of weight. She knew how it settled in the chest and stayed, not roaring, just sitting, heavy and permanent, the way a stone sits on the bottom of a river. She said, "What do you need?" He looked at the floor, then at her. He said, "There's a woman in this town named Claire Fulton. She's got something that belongs to me. I need to get it back before I move on, and I can't go to her door without half the street knowing about it. I thought maybe you could help me reach her. You know people here." Nora said, "I know people who come in needing baths. That's a different thing," he said. "Claire Fulton comes in every Thursday." Nora looked at him. He said, "I'm not asking you to lie to anyone. I'm asking you to pass a word." The lamp swayed again. Nora thought about the boot prints by the water trough. She thought about the 11 cents she'd covered for a woman whose name she still didn't know. She thought about how every person who'd ever passed through her door had brought their trouble in with them and taken it back out, and she had. She said, "What's the word?" He let out a breath, slow, like he'd been holding it since the side door. He said, "Tell her Cole came back. Tell her to bring the letter to the dry goods alley at midday tomorrow. She'll know what it means." Nora said, "And if she doesn't come," he said, "then I'll be gone by sundown, and that'll be the end of it." She looked at him for a long moment. He was tired. She could see it in the way he held his hat, like it was the heaviest thing he owned. She could see it in the set of his jaw, which was the jaw of a man who had been awake for a long time and was not expecting sleep soon. She said, "There's cold water in the barrel and a clean cup on the shelf." He looked at the barrel. He poured himself a cup and drank it standing up. He set the cup back on the shelf without being asked. She said, "Claire Fulton. Thursday woman, brown hair, keeps to herself." He said, "That's her." Nora said, "I'll see what I can do." He put his hat back on and walked to the side door. He paused with his hand on the frame, not turning around. He said, "I left a button last time. I don't know why I did that." Nora did not say anything. He said, "It was my father's coat. I want you to know it wasn't nothing." He went out the side door. Nora sat in the chair for a long time after, listening to the sound of him not quite disappearing. Claire Fulton came in on Thursday morning, regular as weather, with her coin purse and her closed-in expression and the way she had of looking. Nora had thought about how to say the word all through Wednesday night. She ended up saying it the simple way. She waited until Claire had paid and was heading down the hall, and then she said it low and even. She said, "Someone came by and said to tell you he came back. He said to bring the letter to Dry Goods Alley at midday." Claire stopped walking. She didn't turn around. Nora watched the back of her, the stiff shoulders and the way her hands went still at her sides. After a moment, Claire said, "Was he all right?" Nora said, "He was on his feet." Claire said nothing else. She went down the hall. When she came back out, her face was the same as before, shut and careful, but her eyes were doing something different that Nora recognized the way. Claire left without saying goodbye. Nora watched her go down the street, walking with her head down and her hands in her coat pockets, moving towards something she'd thought was gone. At noon, Nora found a reason to walk past the dry goods alley. She didn't look in. She kept walking, but she heard in the narrow gap between the two buildings the low sound of two people talking, not loud, not long, just two voices in a small space. She bought a spool of thread she didn't need and walked back the other way. When she passed the alley the second time, it was empty. She stood at the end of it for a moment. The wind came through with dust and the smell of rain 2 counties away. She thought about what Claire's face had done when she'd heard the word came back. She thought about a lot of things, standing there at the edge of that empty alley with a spool of thread in her hand and the afternoon going long. Then she went back to the bathhouse, opened the door, and waited for the next person who needed something she could give them. Lou Crane came back on Friday morning, and this time he wasn't being casual. He sat down in the chair Nora kept by the front window, which nobody sat in except her, and he turned his hat over in his hands and said, "I need." Nora said, "Then ask it." He said, "Has Cole Harmon come through here again?" Nora looked at him. Lou Crane was not a bad man. He had been in Gravel Bend longer than she had, and he wore his badge with the seriousness of a man who believed in the thing the badge was supposed. She respected that, the same way she respected a straight fence post. She said, "Why?" He said, "Because we got word he was spotted near the spine 2 nights ago, and this is the only place in town that keeps water running after dark." Nora said, "A lot of people use that water trough?" Lou said. Nora, the way he said her name was different this time. It wasn't pushing. It was close to asking. He said, "I'm not trying to make your life harder. I'm trying to do my job, and my job right now is finding a man whose picture is on a notice. And the trouble is, the more I find out about Mineral Ridge, the less the picture." Nora said, "What do you mean?" Lou said, "The men who hit that bank, 3 of them had records going back 7 years, old hands at it. The 4th one, the one who didn't take anything and didn't fire anything, he was new to the group. He was there because one of the other 3 told him it was a freight job, a legal thing, the kind a man takes when he's short, and it's winter." Nora said nothing. Lou said, "The man who died was inside man trouble, and it came from one of the 3, not the 4th. We know that now. The judge in Mineral Ridge knows that now. The problem is, nobody told the 4th man that the law's picture of it had changed." The room was quiet. Nora thought about what he'd said, careful, parsing it the way she parsed everything, for what was in it and what was underneath it. She said, "Are you telling me he's not wanted anymore?" Lou said, "I'm telling you the warrant's under review. I'm telling you that if a man wanted to come in and make a statement, the moment to do that is now, before it dries up and closes and he spends." Nora looked out the front window. Main Street was going about its morning the way it always did, slow and dusty and regular, the same 8 horses at the same 3 rails, the same. She said, "If I knew how to reach him, which I'm not saying I do, how long does now last?" Lou said, "Sundown today. The circuit judge moves on tomorrow, and he won't be back till spring." Nora said, "That's not much time." Lou said, "No, it isn't." He stood up, put his hat on, and looked at her in the direct way he had. The way that said he'd said what he came to say and wasn't going to push. He said, "I'll be in my office till 5. Then he left. Nora stood at the window. The spool of thread was still on the shelf where she'd put it 2 days ago. Claire Fulton's face was still in her head, doing the thing it had done when she'd heard came back. The copper button was still in her apron pocket. She looked at the clock on the shelf. 9 in the morning. 8 hours. She untied her apron, folded it over the chair, and walked out the front door. She found him where she thought she would find him, because she had been paying attention for 4 days, and paying attention was the one skill she. He was in the low cedar brake north of the water trough with his horse tied loose and his back against a rock and his hat pulled down, not sleeping. She walked to the edge of the cedar brake and stopped. She said, "I'm not Lou Crane, so don't do anything stupid." He pushed his hat back and looked at her. She said, "The warrant's under review. Lowe says the judge's picture of it changed. He says, if you go in today and make a statement, there's a chance it closes clean." Cole said nothing. She said, "Lou will be in his office till 5. The judge moves on tomorrow." Still nothing. He was looking at her with the look of a man running math that doesn't add up no matter which way he turns it. She said, "I'm not telling you what to do. I'm telling you what I know because you told me something true and it seems right to return the favor." He said, "Why do you care?" It was a fair question. She stood in the edge of the cedars with the wind in her hair and thought about all the small ways this stranger had crossed her path in 5 days. The folded button that meant something once. Claire Fulton's face. The boot prints in the morning dirt. She said, "I've been in this town 3 years, and in that time, I've watched a lot of people move through. Most of them don't leave anything behind. You left a button." He looked at her. She said, "That's a small thing. But small things are the ones that end up being the actual thing." The cedars moved in the wind. He reached into his coat pocket. He pulled out a piece of paper, folded small. He looked at it. She recognized the careful way he held it. The way Claire had held herself when she walked out of the bathhouse. 2 people who'd had something, and then hadn't, and were trying to figure out if had could become have again. She didn't ask what was in the letter. She said, "Lou's a straight man. If he says the warrant's under review, he believes it." Cole sat with that. The wind moved again, pulling the dust south. He said, "If I walk into that office and it goes wrong," she said, "it won't go less wrong by waiting." He looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked at the paper in his hand. Then he stood up, slow, with the careful movement of a man who's been carrying something heavy and isn't sure yet whether he's allowed to put it down. He folded the letter and put it back in his pocket. He picked up his horse's reins. He said, "The button was my father's. He wore that coat the day he brought my mother home from the hospital after she lost a child. He always said it was the bravest thing he ever did, going back in the world after something like that. Like you could decide to stay open even when everything in you wanted to close." Nora felt something in her chest shift, slow and quiet, like a door that had been stuck swinging free. She said nothing. He said, "I thought maybe it belonged somewhere, it could mean something. I don't know why I left it with you. I just did." He looked at her, not asking, not explaining, just looking. She put her hand in her apron pocket, even though she wasn't wearing the apron. Reflex, the pocket was empty. She said, "Go talk to Lou." He nodded. He walked his horse out of the cedar brake and toward town, and she watched him go, straight-backed and slow, not running, not hiding, just walking. She stood in the cedars until she couldn't see him anymore. The wind came off the spine, carrying the smell of rain from far away. She thought about the woman who'd been 11 cents short, and how she hadn't needed a reason to cover it. She thought about Claire's face in the hallway, doing the thing it did when hope came back unexpected. She thought about a coat a man wore the day he went back into the world after grief and decided to stay open. She stood there a long time. Then she went back to town, walked in the front door of the bathhouse, tied her apron on, and opened the door for the afternoon. At 10 minutes past 5, Lou Crane came by. He stood in the doorway without coming all the way in and said, he came in. Nora said, and Lo said, and the judge heard him, and the warrant came off, and he'll need to sign some papers in the spring, but he's clear to move. Nora looked at the shelf, the spool of thread, the lamp, the clock. She said, "All right." Lou said, "You didn't tell me anything." She said, "I didn't tell you anything." Lou almost smiled. Not quite. Close enough. He left. Nora boiled the last pot of the day. Outside, the sun was going down behind the spine, the whole ridge gone gold and burning, the kind of sky that made even flat country look like. She went to the back room. On the clean shelf where she kept the towels, there was a small thing sitting in the light, a coin. Silver old with a date pressed into it from a year before she was born. She picked it up. She turned it over. On the back, scratched thin with a nail or a knife point, were 3 words for being open. She held it in her palm for a long time. The bathhouse was quiet around her. The town went on outside. The spine went gold, then red, then gray. She put the coin in her apron pocket, next to where the button had been. She went to the window and looked out at the last of the light. Somewhere out past the spine, a man was riding with a letter in his pocket and the particular kind of lightness that comes when adore you thought. And somewhere in this same small town, Claire Fulton was sitting in whatever room she sat in at the end of the day, holding whatever it was she held. Nora pressed her hand flat against the window glass. It was warm from the afternoon sun. She held it there. She thought about Open. She thought about how a person decides to stay that way, even when the world keeps handing you reasons not to. She thought about it for a long time, her hand on the glass, the last light going out past the ridge. Then she let the warmth in. And she kept it.